Hi, my name is Laura Qadri with the Intown Atlanta chapter of the Georgia Native Plant Society. To celebrate the first day of spring, we've put together this video from our presentation on native gardening in every season. Michael Hudgins is going to speak to you first about how to protect your garden in the spring by identifying and removing invasive plants. And then I'm going to speak about spring garden care along with plants of interest this time of year. Enjoy!
Now, I haven't been doing this for that long, a little bit less than 10 years, but I really like spring. Is that normal? It's normal. Spring is a great time for monitoring and prevention. You want to check out your old work areas, see if those invasive populations have they increased, have they decreased, can you make improvements, have you change your timing. And prevention is crucial for long-term success. What is success? This was taught to me early on. Tabitha Schwartz told me, Michael, she said, it's not about eradication, it's about suppression. If you spend all your time focused on one plant or two plants and just trying to get rid of them, you're going to miss out on the other invasive plants that are proliferating around you and slowly growing. So it's about suppressing everything as a whole and not just being so tunnel vision where you're focused on getting rid of just one or two things. Now I selected these three because these are ones you're going to want to watch out for. And there's more, of course, but these are just three examples. These are all very difficult to control once they are established. So catching them early is very important. Lesser celandine is a spring ephemeral, really popular. Not popular. You see it on stream banks, damp areas is where it likes to spread. It's actually a plant that was celebrated by the poet William Wordsworth for its bravery in the cold and its brightening of spring with its yellow blooms. Small populations can be dug out, but care should be taken to remove all those tubers. And you see in that top right corner, tubers are about this small. Cinnamon vine. This is a non-native yam. Again, very difficult to control once established. Quickly, those twining vines will overtake bushes and small trees. Can be clipped and mowed over several growing seasons to help exhaust the plant. Stay on top of it though. A yam, or whatever you say I am. And if I wasn't, then why would you say I am? Take a look at our native wild yam and the difference with the invasive yam. The invasive yam cinnamon vine has that purplish red coloring throughout the plant that you see. The native wild yam does not have that. Another key indicator is that cinnamon vine has those aerial tubers where our native wild yam does not. And also, the native wild yam doesn't behave like that, which is another good indicator. A couple of other examples that you can go after during spring. Very common, but not always that noticeable. You've got invasive bittersweet vine. Small plants can be dug out. The orange roots are a distinguishing feature of this plant. For the big vines growing up the trees, you're going to want to cut a 4 to 5 foot gap. Everything going up the tree is going to die, wither away. No need to pull on it and risk damaging branches or damaging the tree. And then you'll have that stump at the bottom to manage moving forward. Bush honeysuckle is everywhere. I'm sure you've noticed. And it's one of the first plants to leaf out in the spring, one of the last to drop its leaves in the fall. So that makes it highly competitive. It also makes it an easy target during those seasons. Obviously, you want to include it in the spring. The big difference in the fall, it's going to have all those berries you have to deal with and risk spreading around. Shallow, sprawling roots can be uprooted relatively easy, but again, you're going to be mindful of the disturbance that it can create.
All right, so during spring, we definitely start to get a longer to-do list. This is the time to direct sow seeds that don't need cold stratification and then plant potted plants or your winter zone seedlings. It's also a good time in the late winter, early spring. You can prune things that bloom on new wood, smooth hydrangea, or the shrubby or bushy St. John's wort, or some natives that can be pruned in early spring. But if it blooms on old wood, like oak leaf hydrangeas, you want to wait and prune after they have bloomed for the season. This is also the time to cut back the flower stems from last year. If you leave the seed heads over the winter, that provides food for birds and wildlife. And then if you cut them to about 8 to 18 inches in the spring, you create cavities for nesting native bees. So then over the summer, as the flowers grow up, they'll cover that stubble and the bee larvae develop, and then they can hibernate in last year's stem over the winter while the birds are eating the seeds from the newer dead flowers. Spring, we start to see a lot of colorful blooms in our native gardens. This is blue wild indigo, which is a native perennial, but it does grow to the size of a small bush, like 2 to 4 feet wide and high, which is something to learn before you plant it, like right under a tree with like 6 of them, theoretically. In related information, I've had very good success with winter sow with this one. Then you just have to figure out where to put all them. But it is one that it will take 2 to 3 years to bloom if it's started from seed. So if you're not patient, you might want to buy a potted, already grown one from someone. Moss phlox is a great way to get a lot of color in a native garden. It's a low kind of ground cover spring perennial that will kind of create that wash of color in your garden. Sundrops are bright yellow and do really well in landscapes. They can tolerate a lot of conditions. They can tolerate really hot and dry conditions. Blue-eyed grass is actually in the iris family. It's not a grass, but the leaves have that grass-like appearance, and it can be planted as a ground cover. It can also just be a nice kind of mass planting, or it can be used as a border. I've actually used it in my yard to replace a liriope border, and it has really beautiful blue flowers in the spring, and I think it's a lot better than what was there before. Now, for shady areas, there are also some great options for flowers. Woodland phlox and heartleaf foamflower can be really beautiful in a woodland garden. You can intermix them and make a beautiful kind of sea of color. And the heartleaf foamflower has evergreen or semi-evergreen basal leaves, so that can kind of keep some interest and structure there year-round. Woodland pinkroot has these really interesting red and yellow flowers that attract hummingbirds as well as bees and butterflies. Spring has some beautiful native vines. Coral honeysuckle, crossvine, and Carolina jessamine all have evergreen or semi-evergreen leaves, and then bright flowers in the spring. They can attract hummingbirds, bees, and butterflies and be a really beautiful addition to your landscape. Now, spice bush is one of the early bloomers of the spring. It's a shrub that gets between 6 and 15 feet high, and it is sometimes called native forsythia because it gets the yellow blooms before it leaves out. And it also has a beautiful fall color, and it is the larval host for the spice bush swallowtail. It's a beautiful butterfly and has a really cool looking caterpillar, which is very important to my 6-year-old. The Piedmont azalea is a shrub that's more of an understory shrub, so it likes part shade, grows to 5 to 10 feet, and then has beautiful pink blooms and attracts hummingbirds, bees, butterflies. Eastern redbud can be a really lovely specimen tree in a garden, grows up to 30 feet tall. It likes part shade to shady areas. And it also has a really beautiful fall color, as well as fall seed pods that feed birds and wildlife. We hope you enjoyed this excerpt. To make sure that you don't miss any of our events and programming, go to gnps.org to see all that we have to offer and become a member. Thanks for watching, and happy gardening.